Okay, here's a quick couple of sort of colorizing of After Effects, Premiere Pro effects for you, which you could potentially use in your music videos. They're quite kind of extreme, a little bit sort of trippy, but can kind of work for certain things. So if you bring in, I've given you a couple of sort of clips to potentially work with, but if you can bring one of them into Premiere Pro and pop it on your timeline, and the effect you need to search for is called HLS, color balance, or color balance HLS. Then if you bring that onto your clip, and as usual we need to go over to our effects settings over here, and this is really just a question of kind of messing around with your hue to get sort of different effects. So you can kind of get some really weird, it's a little bit 80s in places, 80s music video, or kind of you maybe taken something you shouldn't have done and it's all a bit kind of trippy and weird. You know, you can kind of hype out the sort of purples. Oh yeah, if you bring up saturation, it all goes very, very, very strange. Or pull out the saturation if you want to make it a little bit sort of faded. That's kind of cool. But you know, depending on the effect that you're after, you can make keyframes on here as well, so you could get your colours to sort of morph. But that's made him look very green. Okay, so that's that one. Pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna take that out, bring him back to normal. So the other one, there's an effect called solarize, and this term is a photography term. It comes from sort of back in the day when you did darkroom photography, and if you were kind of developing your black and white photos, if you halfway through the process or part way through the process, you know, you're in the dark room and you're putting your sort of photo in the developer, if you sort of turn on the lights part way through the process, it creates these kind of weird, well, I mean, the best thing to do is show you what solarize actually looks like. So it creates effects a bit like this. Obviously it would be black and white with a black and white photo, but you know, it's not kind of dissimilar to the using the HLS color balance, but I mean, this is almost like a negative effect. If you've ever seen like a color negative, which you may or may not have, but obviously back in the day when you pre-digital, you'd get color prints done of any photos you've taken, and if you looked at the negatives, everything is kind of reversed in that sort of way, and that's sort of what this actually does here. So again, quite a trippy sort of effect. But potentially useful for certain things. There are a couple of other solarize effects, solarize in and solarize out. These are almost sort of transitions, but you can do some quite interesting tweaks with them. So if I bring solarize in, and you'll notice it kind of starts with the effect, and then it sort of bleeds into, you know, your normal sort of color. So you can use it maybe as a, you know, transition from one location to another, that kind of thing. But what is interesting is if we have a look over here, and you can always do some sort of like live edits with this. So if you, let's say for example, start with your threshold really high, then if you move down a little bit, and I don't know if you can kind of see this, but if you do sort of move, so I'm trying to zoom this so you can sort of see it. That's better. Yeah, so if you move your threshold as you go along, then you can get these sort of changes happening in real time. There's another one there. That's gone a bit too normal. And you can also edit these little keyframe things here as well, and also kind of change sort of like curve functions you can do on here as well. You probably want to maybe give yourself a little bit more room to sort of do that, so you can do some quite interesting little tweaks on there. These kind of effects can be a bit processor intensive, so when you do play it, you know, it might be a bit on the glitchy side. So it's sort of jumping a little bit there, but you can sort of see the general idea with it. Always bear in mind with Premiere Pro and also things like After Effects, you've got playback resolution here. So, you know, if your computer is struggling to play back something at full resolution, then you can always drop it down to, you know, half, a quarter, or an eighth, and it will sort of make your footage look a bit pixely, but you'll get a better idea of what the effects looks like, or what the effect looks like. But then you can actually, obviously, when you render it, it's going to look fine. So I don't know if that'll play a bit more smoothly. Not a huge amount, but you can see it's a lot sort of rougher around the edges. But as mentioned, if you do decide to render it, then everything should be nice and smooth at the end of it. Okay, so there's sort of free, I mean, also there's a solarize out function here, so you can actually, I've not actually used this one before, but I imagine it does the exact opposite. So when you get to the end of the clip, it probably just sort of bleaches it out at the end. There he goes. So yeah, okay, so have a go with those. You can choose the clip. So there's a couple there. Color height tutorial 2, color height tutorial 1. So have a go with those. Okay.